tighten your lines as we get ready to sail the seven seas on the Political Pirate Podcast. Join Captain Ted Yoho and the salty dog John Martin as they search far and wide for the greatest treasure of all, the truth. From local Florida news to nationwide stories and the globe beyond, we've got it all mapped out. Now here's your hosts, the salty dog John Martin and Captain Ted Yoho.
Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the 3 Ps, the Political Pirate Podcast, with your host, the old salty dog, and the captain of our pirate ship, none other than Mr. Ted Yoho. Good morning, Captain Ted.
Good morning, John. Good morning to you, and happy Monday.
Absolutely. We appreciate everybody starting their week off with us. Well, before we get into kind of the meat and potatoes of the show, I want to make mention of something I just saw late last night and early this morning. A guy named Eric Van Daniken. I don't know if you know who he was, Ted, but he's the guy that wrote the book, The Chariots of the Gods, and was kind of really started the whole UFO, not UFOs themselves, but us paying attention and TV shows like Ancient Aliens and all that stuff. And he's the first guy to really come out about, ancient history and how it might tie into extraterrestrials. And I'm not saying any of that's necessarily true, but I got to tell you, when he hit the scene in the 70s and I saw that movie, it made me start looking up at the sky differently. So I just want to kind of give the man some credit.
Well, that's good. That's a good way to do it. Did he pass away or?
Yes, he passed away. I think he was in his 90s. So he lived a good long life and was pretty active right up to the end. But he made some fascinating points about some of the ancient ruins and stuff that we have here and some of the things. And I think he got people to at least think about the stars and that kind of thing, and really catapulted a whole genre of TV programs and everything else. So whether you liked him or not, or even know who he was, check him out, because I think he deserves a bit of credit.
No, I think you're right. I do know who that guy is, and he brought that to the forefront. And I have to admit, Carolyn and I have seen UFOs. I mean, they really were. We even called it in, and other people saw it too. So who knows? Maybe they're the ones. You can look at some of the Democrats and say, I think some of those are aliens.
Yeah,
well, their mindset.
I posted about his death on my personal Facebook page, and basically I said, rest in the cosmos, Eric,
Cosmos peace.
Absolutely. But we're going to start out the program today talking about, and I titled it Selective Liberal Tears, because it's amazing to me what the difference of what they prioritize, what they cry about. And we're going to start out the show with a video of the Portland police chief talking about Trinde Alagua, TDA as he calls it. I'll say that so I don't have to pronounce it so much. And
there you
go. They were actually wounded while trying to be apprehended. I want people to see what this Portland police chief says, and then we'll come back and talk about it, Ted.
All right, good enough.
There is an association with the two folks yesterday and TDA. I hesitated to even share this information initially because I'm very aware of the historic injustice of victim blaming, oftentimes portrayed by law enforcement, including this very agency that I've represented so proudly for so many years. And historically, we have not been quick to disclose the potential criminal history of others. But I felt it was imperative because I was asked yesterday in the news conference what information we have. This is information we have. This in no way draws a through line to the actions or the behaviors that occurred yesterday. I want to speak for just a moment specifically to my Latino community. It saddens me that we even have to qualify these remarks, because I understand or at least have attempted to understand through your voices, your concern, your fear, your anger. This information in no way is meant to disparage or to condone or support or agree with any of the actions that occurred yesterday. But it is important that we stay committed to the rule of law, that we stay committed to the facts, that we stay a trustworthy and legitimate police department for all of Portlanders.
I mean, Ted, I'm not
What I
saying
can
we
say
shouldn't
is
feel for any loss of life, period. In this case, these two people were actually wounded. And I'm not even necessarily even talking about that, but the idea that somehow these two people that were wounded that are suspects with TDA and suspects in multiple felonies and were being pulled over and detained or potentially but in this case, I think it was actually Border Patrol, and that they were shot and all, but this police chief is going to cry tears like that's even the same as the lady that was killed in Minneapolis. It's just ridiculous. I want to say that those are probably fake tears, but maybe not. I mean, what are your thoughts about this, Ted? It's just crazy to me.
It's allergies. I think he had allergies. I don't want to fault anybody for having empathy and, the loss of life. But I wish he would have that, and maybe he does have that kind of empathy for the people whose families were disrupted by a killing, a rape, a murder, robbery by somebody here illegally, especially by I like your acronym, TDA. Does he shed that kind of tears here too for American citizens? It'd be interesting to find out. But he is in Portland, and we know Portland is it is a special place, and it's just a tragic accident. And we have to go back, as we talked about on Friday, cause and effect. With the Border Patrol or ICE doing the crackdown that they're doing now, had the previous administration followed the rule of law and secured our borders, I don't think we'd have this problem.
Yeah, and like I kind of mentioned this a little bit on our Friday show, but this lady, Ms. Good, that was killed in Minneapolis, and the loss of life is certainly tragic and all of that, and the details need to continue to come out and investigate. But she wouldn't, if she had been killed by an illegal immigrant, like we've seen so many killed, whether it be in a DUI or rape and murder, we probably wouldn't even know her name. But because it was an ICE agent, and I don't know about you, Ted, but I kind of mentioned this before, but I'm so tired of this way they present it, the mother issue or the Maryland dad issue, not saying anything about, the fact that she was a mother and all of that kind of stuff, but somehow the victims of some of this crime are not victims of murder and stuff like that. And think about this lady, Rachel Morin, she was actually in Maryland, and she was raped, murdered, and left on a trail. And I think she's a mother of three as well, by a convicted now illegal immigrant who had multiple convictions, had been deported multiple times. But I don't see the left shedding tears for that lady.
No, sure don't. And you talk about a double standard because it doesn't fit their narrative. They want to go for the oppressed and the people that are here that are against the establishment, the white Anglo-Saxon establishment, the old guard, I guess would be a better term to say. And that doesn't fit into that narrative. It doesn't support the suppressed people. So it's not going to make headlines. Just like that Arena, was that her name? The young lady that was stabbed to death by the black man, had been let out of prison multiple times. And that didn't get much press coverage anywhere. I mean, it really didn't. But Miss Good up there, the more we find out about her, the legacy media, and this is the Wall Street Journal to, the news shows, they all painted her as a Mother Teresa type. And, you could tell where the story was going because at the end it says she was a published poet. But as we find out, she was a community organizer. She was doing protest organizations, anti-ICE raids. And I guess it was her, spouse that was in the car with her, or if she wasn't in the car, she talked her into coming up to Minnesota to get involved in this. And so that's a big story because she put herself in a bad situation and paid the ultimate price for that. I think that the best thing is what Tom Homan said, and I agree 100% with this. Let the investigation carry out before you get morons like Tim. That's almost a double negative to say a moron like Tim Walz, and then the Mayor Fry to come out and make the statements they did without the facts. It's just those are the things that fan the flames, and the legacy media is all too happen to promote that.
Yeah, well, as I was coming in, I was listening to Morning Joe, like I do a service for y'all, so you don't have to. And I almost had to turn
I really
it off.
appreciate that.
I almost had to turn it off, Ted, because it's just some of the stuff they're saying is just irritates me at the gut level. I can't help myself. But I'm going to mention a few of these because I'm hearing from the left all this kind of thing. So I'm going to start with the January 6th situation because you're hearing people, and CNN had Ms. Nome on and trying to paint the picture between what the police officers, how they reacted in Minneapolis versus the Capitol Police that were attacked and all that. Okay, here's the thing. They keep saying, well, Donald Trump pardoned all the January 6 people. That is true. However, in order to pardon someone, they have to have been convicted. And in this case, they served time. So it's not
They sure did.
Some of them were in there for like 4 years or more. It's not like they didn't serve time. So you could debate whether Donald Trump should have blanket pardoned them, should have pardoned any of them, or maybe certain ones not. That is worthy of discussion. But to compare that he pardoned the January 6 people and he didn't, and pardon these other people and these police officers and that kind of thing, they haven't even been tried yet. That hasn't even come to trial. And so it's just ridiculous comparison because the people for January 6th actually served time and he pardoned them. So to me, there's no comparison there, but they're trying to make it that way.
Well, they are. And again, you got the legacy media that is sowing dissent in this country. They have picked sides, and they picked the sides of the left, the Democrats, the liberal progressives, and that's the wrong side. It'll be written down in history, provided we keep people educated, motivated, and activated. That this will all get exposed in time because they're promoting something that is anti-American, that is tearing this country apart, that is causing that discord, that doesn't work to heal this nation. And if they just stuck with the facts and let the American people figure this out, it would go in a different direction. But you can't make money from your advertisers if you don't have a big draw. And so, they're being manipulated. The people are being manipulated by big media and for profit, the billionaires.
Yeah, and another thing that I'm hearing constantly about the criticism of ICE, whether it's fair or not, is a whole nother story. But they talk about, ICE was supposed to, in the Border Patrol, deal with situations down at the border. They're not trained to go into cities and all of this stuff. And they even talk about their training and conditioning and all of this stuff. And let me just say, for the sake of conversation, if I give you all of that, if I just say, okay, they're supposed to be down on the border, which is not 100% true. They're not properly trained, which is probably not true as well. But let's just, for the sake of conversation, Ted, say I give you all of that. And then they throw on top of that they're only targeting Democrat or blue states and blue cities. And let me just give everybody all of that. I want to make a point, though, Ted. It'll make sense in a
I
second.
know.
Here's the point. Why are they in Minneapolis? Why are they in LA and New York and Chicago, the quote blue cities? It's because the police officers there, by order of the mayors and whatnot, are not doing their job. They're not turning people over. We had a judge that literally aided and abetted a known felon from being arrested by ICE. So if they would cooperate, wouldn't be a sanctuary city, and turn these people over when they get arrested, they could focus just on the bad hombres or whatever. But because they just release them out to the general populace, then they have to do that. And one more thing on that, Ted. Let's just say, okay, that the Border Patrol, we'll use them, is supposed to be mostly down at the border. Well, why are they in Portland and those places? Because under the Biden administration, they not only let millions of people came in here, but they purposely flew them into cities, bust them into cities, turned them loose on the street, and spread them all over the country. And that is why they can't do their job at the border, because all these people are everywhere. So if you say all that and don't acknowledge what the previous administration, the fiasco they created, then you're not being honest. And it just irks me, Ted. Sorry to drone on, but chime in on all that.
I could tell.
Man.
No, I could tell it does. Well, again, it's cause and effect. And to say the Border Patrol does not have that kind of capability, I'll guarantee you they were trained in the procedures on how to do this. They wouldn't have to be doing this again had the Biden administration followed the rule of law. And it wasn't just Biden. I mean, go back to Obama. The floodgates were opening up then, and they continued on steroids with Biden, Obama's puppet president. And, they flooded these streets. They caused these situations. And you brought up the sanctuary cities. If there were not sanctuary cities, and they followed the rule of law to protect American citizens and do what we pay our taxes for, I'm paying my taxes. Do what you're supposed to, follow the law, don't have an agenda. And see, they have an agenda again to tear down this country. And that's what they're doing. The enclaves are not even the enclave anymore. The state of Minnesota, you look at Chicago, all those cities that we know that are the problem with this, they're fomenting the discord in this country, putting people's lives in jeopardy, just as you brought up that picture of that lady that was killed by a guy who'd been deported too many times. This is where the divide in America is. It's not over white or black, rich or poor, although they use those to fuel their argument. The divide is over these ideologies that separate our country stronger than anything else. And it's the constitutional republic, rule of law on one side, and it's the anti-American on the other side. And this is where you're seeing this division, and this is where the Civil War will be fought over an ideological war, because those two principles cannot coexist. It's like Christianity and Muslim. Those two cannot coexist, because if you're a true believer in Muslim, you have to suppress the Christian, either get them to convert or you murder them. I mean, that's in their doctrine. And so this is where this country's going. And this is something that the Muslim community, the radical Muslim community, is really working with the liberals. I was listening to a podcast over the weekend, and a guy wrote a book. It's called Two Swords of Jesus, or Christ, Two Swords of Christ. And he was talking about this, how those liberal progressives and the LGBTQ helped get something passed in one of the Arab nations. As soon as they got that passed, they kicked all the LGBTQ out. They were using the LGBT community to get their agenda through. And then as soon as it got through, they threw them out. So that's how this is going to play out. You're going to see all these minority groups work to disrupt the status quo of America. And as once they get that majority of minorities is going to suppress the others. And it's going to be a rude wake-up call if we allow that to happen. Our goal and our intent, I'm sure you're the same way as I am, is to educate, activate, motivate, or motivate and activate people so that we can prevent this from happening.
Yeah, when you were talking about that, I was reminded of what Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, did, where he flew in there a bunch of illegal immigrants to Martha's Vineyard. How long, Ted, did it take them to round them up and get them out of there? I mean, and it was all liberals up there doing it. I mean, less than 24 hours, they had all those people rounded up and gotten the heck out of there, man. It's unbelievable.
Well, it's that NAMBY principle. You can do it anywhere you want, but not in my backyard.
Yeah, and you mentioned the mayor, Fry, I think his name is, in
Right,
Minneapolis. Some of the things he said. And, and I don't like to use the Nazi term too often because I think it's there's a special category for them. But the left has accused Trump and everybody around him as being Nazis. Well, I want to mention something because they say, the rhetoric, like the mayor in Minneapolis said, well, I said the F word and they got guns. I want to bring up somebody that rarely gets talked about with the Nazis, though. Joseph Goebbels. Joseph Goebbels was the propaganda genius. Let's just say he really was. I'm not agreeing
with him. He really was.
A thing he did, but he was a genius. If you think, can you imagine him with social media? I mean, and that kind of thing. They did. And here's the thing. As far as I know, now he did a lot of, created like the SS and some other things. As far as I know, there's no one who said that Joseph Goebbels actually, him personally, actually killed anybody. Do I think he might have shot somebody? Yeah, but he was the propaganda minister, put all of the stuff.
He sure was.
There. And I think you could make a case that that man right there is responsible for the death of millions of people. Millions of people, even though he may not have ever pulled a trigger. So when you start talking about propaganda, the left has all of this propaganda and they don't realize they're talking about Nazis, that they are doing exactly what Joseph Goebbels did and creating a propaganda, which then in turn leads other people to commit the violence.
It really does. It's the best way to create violence is get other people to do it. You've got the agenda. And again, we're seeing this play out here in the 21st century. We've seen this story before, and people just, let's hope the common sense of people, and I know common sense is uncommon. If it wasn't, everybody would have it. But let's just hope that they see this and they reject it. I mean, the stuff that the progressive left is pushing is absolutely ludicrous. I sent you pictures of Venezuela and Cuba. I don't know if you got them or if they can be put up, but that's the utopia that the AOCs, the Bernie Sanders, the Jasmine Crockett's, and all the liberal progressives want to create for America. That's the Venezuelan utopia that they envision. In reality, that's what they're trying to bring here. And you see it up in New York with Mamdani and his Secretary of Housing, who's a communist. And they want to bring in government-controlled rent and buildings. Good luck with that. I don't want to live it, don't want any part of it, and it doesn't belong here in America.
Well, a little bit later from now, we're going to talk about an editorial piece that you wrote, Ted, about the property tax in the state of Florida. We'll get into that in a minute. But you talked about the housing minister or whatever. She up there under Mamdani is opposed to private property ownership at all. And so we won't have to worry about property taxes. I don't know where we're going to pay, but nobody owns anything. So it's just crazy. But you mentioned Jasmine Crockett.
Wait. Before you go into Jasmine, that lady, and I forget her name, it's CV or something like that. What she is espousing is exactly what the World Economic Forum said with Klaus Schwab. By 2030, you'll own nothing, but you'll be happy. That's exactly where they're going in New York. And I can't wish that to fail faster than any other proposal because it'll be a wake up and people will reject it. So go ahead, Jasmine.
Yeah, well, Jasmine Crockett, who I know has become a real favorite of yours, but
Absolutely.
talk about
I
like
like her
race.
because you never know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
Which
This is
Jasmine Crockett?
something she said recently really jumped out at me. And to me, this is about as racist a statement as you could make against people of color. I can't imagine a white person saying this and not being just raked over the coals. But Jasmine Crockett said this, Ted, says a city with no crime, if you don't have crime in your city, then it means that it is a white dominated city. That's literally what she said. Look it up. People can look it up. I'm not, fact check me all you want. So she's saying that white people, that the reason you have crime in cities is because you have people of color. I mean, this is ridiculous.
I don't know how to respond to that. I mean, hey, Jasmine, I'm talking to you. Feel free to come into our cities. They're safe. um, it just the lunacy of these people. And again, as you go further into politics, and I've seen a decline. When I went up there, I was the radical, I was the outspoken one, but I was for fixing things. And now they're saying they miss me up there when I go up there. And they say the people up there now, they don't even want to fix anything. It's all a political divide that they're trying to beat their side. And I know you've got that clip up where the broadcaster says, it's time for us to pick up our weapons.
Yeah,
what is that
absolutely.
fomenting? Brittany Cooper out of Rutgers University. It's time we start killing white people. Professor. These things are going on, and they've been going on, and it's coming to a head right now. We're seeing the fruition, or the works coming to fruition of what they've been saying for the last 10, 15 years. And really, Obama was probably the biggest division that we had in this country. He could have done so many great things, but he really drew that line and put us against them. And what I'm saying, us, the people that believe in America and the Constitutional Republic, against how the evils of America and how it's been bad all over the world.
Well, you may remember this video. We've played it before, but I think it's worth playing. Jasmine Crockett, and she tells you in a way what the definition of a criminal or a crime might be. So we'll play this and we'll come back and talk about it real quick.
And so I do want people to know that just because someone has committed a crime, it doesn't make them a criminal. That is completely different. Being a criminal is more so about your mindset. Committing a crime can come for a lot of different reasons.
There you have it. There's no crime in white-dominated cities. She talked about that. But then she goes on to say, just because you commit a crime doesn't mean you're a criminal. And what is the definition of a criminal?
I don't know. I always thought it was somebody created a crime. But now we can talk. I stole a piece of bubble gum as a kid. Was I a criminal? It was a criminal act. Does it make me a criminal? Well, probably not. But I don't think we're talking about those things. I think, when you carjacking, rape, murder, theft, going into the department stores in mass, breaking windows, stealing everything in those organized hijacks they do, and shoplifting. They're not even shoplifting; they're burglaries. She's putting those people in. Well, it's not really. They're not criminals. It was a crime, but they're not criminals, is what I think she's referring to, and that's wrong. Of course, the liberal prosecutors, supported by Soros, they back that up, because if it's under $1,000 crime of theft, they're not going to prosecute it. So you're promoting exactly what you don't want by not prosecuting.
Yeah, it's like your favorite lady, Miss Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, when people are like smashing windows and grabbing Rolex watches, they're just trying to get a loaf of bread, Ted. That's all they're doing. You just
trying to feed their family. Just trying to feed their family.
Just trying to feed the family. How did we get this insane as a nation, Ted? It baffles me.
Well, you got the outside groups. You got the Soroses. Then you have the foreign countries, Iran. I mean, the ones are China, Iran, Russia, North Korea. Anybody else that doesn't like us, Cuba, Venezuela. promoting that, and they do that work on the internet. They send the money to do that. Then you have the media that is left, and they believe in the one world government, and they want to control things, and they want to get out the old. I heard something on something I was reading yesterday. It was a podcast, and they said our population of the white Anglo-Saxons is less than 6% of the total world population. We're less than 6%, and as minorities gain the traction in a country, as I was saying earlier, they all group together. So instead of like the African Americans 14%, I think the Muslim community is about 6%, but together they're 20. Then you throw in the angry other minorities, and you're up to 40-50%. And so they work to dislodge us, the people, and I don't want to say us, an old white guy, the people that believe in the constitutional republic and the rule of law and the greatness of America. They are working to overturn this, and it's playing out right in front of us. So it's going to be interesting how this turns out.
Well, Ted, I've always said I believe in teaching the good, the bad, and the ugly of our history. All of it, from how we treated the Indians to slavery, to all of that, to white supremacy, which does exist, but we need to be honest about all of it and teach all of it. And what's happening today is not being taught properly as well, So that's why we try to educate, motivate, and activate people. But I don't have any problem talking about, the history of the white man, if you want to call it that. We've done plenty of things that I'm not proud of. And so let's just teach it all and let the chips fall where they may.
Well, that's really what the whole thing behind education is. And we're in a time in history where you can research this stuff, hopefully get the real information, not Wikipedia. Do your research, and you can look at the track record of different civilizations. The majority of slaves during the Ottoman Empire, as they started, they had more white people enslaved than there was ever in the black slave market that was later on in the 16s through 1800s. There were millions and millions and millions of white, and they would get them out of Europe because they would go into these villages and they would take the strongest boys, and then they would put them in there. They would radicalize them into radical Islam to fight against the other ethnic groups. And they would take the black slaves and they castrated them all. And if you look at the genetics in these areas, the different regions of the world, there's more Eastern European genetics in a lot of the Muslim population than there is Arab. And it was really interesting. And again, this comes out of that book, The Two Swords of Christ. And I'll get you the author over our break.
Matter of fact, we're going to take a commercial break right now. So
I knew that, so I led you into that.
You're the captain of the ship, sir. So if you'd like to become a sponsor of ours, look at the little tagline that says "Contact Freddie." Make that call. We absolutely need your support. We'll be right back.
Although the owner of Lewis Oil Company maintains she is 29, Lewis Oil turns 60 years old in June. Chevron would like to recognize the North Florida second-generation family-owned business, celebrating its growth and staying power. Lewis Oil Company maintains significant on-hand supplies, strategically located fuel depots, a delivery fleet, on-site service, fuel card locks, and convenience stores. Lewis Oil Company understands its responsibility in the local economy by providing service and delivery on demand and in crisis. As a first responder for 18 Florida counties and the Southeast from Texas to Virginia, we are proud of this rare accomplishment. Lewis Oil delivers.
This is Ward Scott, and I want to thank all our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills. The Ward Scott Files premium sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care.
Melvin Law, the only official injury partner of the Florida Gators.
The Ward Scott Files Gold sponsors are Lewis Oil Company, Shoot GTR, On the Spot Dry Cleaners, R&R Construction, and Style Cuts. If you are interested in promoting your business on the show, you can visit our website, www.wardscottfiles.com, and click on the Advertise Here banner on the right side of the page, or call my friend Freddie at 352-284-3733. Again, thank you to all the great businesses that support the Ward Scott Files. And remember, if you like the show, thank our sponsors and support the businesses that support us.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. May God have mercy on your soul.
Ward, that very much surprises me that you've never been tased.
You can't handle the truth!
All these poop.
A warthog. He's going to come up the steps. Here he comes. Oh my goodness, and he's huge. Hello, boy. Wonder if we can pet him. Hi, boy.
Can we touch him? No, don't.
Help me! Help! Help!
We're back to the 3 Ps, the Political Pirate Podcast, with the old salty dog here, John Martin, and the captain of our pirate ship, none other than Ted Yoho. Ted, when we were going to break, you were going to be mentioning an author and a book and all. Please do, sir.
Yeah, it was a podcast I heard with Victor David Hansen asking the questions of the author. His name is Raymond Ibrahim, Ibrahim. The name of the book, and the guy's written several books. This one is The Two Swords of Christ, and it goes through 500 years of Christians fighting Muslims, and it's a very fascinating story. And he goes into this, and how we got to where we're at present day. So it brings us up to where we are today, and it's a fascinating podcast that I listen to, and I encourage people to get the book and become educated. And it really talks you through what's going on, and you can see it happening right in front of us. One of the things, just real quickly, you know how they call the Vatican the See? It's a seat of power for the Christian church. There used to be 5 of those, and that the Vatican is the last one remaining. And so through history, there were 5 C's, and he goes through the history of that and what happens. He talks about the Hospitallers who showed up before the Knights Templars, and they did the same thing. And they're a very passive group that were just protecting people going on pilgrimages. But over time, because of the violence coming out of the Ottoman Empire, they became very militarized. And so did same with the Knights Templars. And it's just really amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and you mentioned Victor David Hansen, so I have to say, that there are reports coming out that he's going through some health issues and major surgery.
Yeah.
And all. He's one of the brightest minds on the planet, and thoughts and prayers go out to him and his family.
Sure, absolutely.
Well, I want to switch gears now. We talk, I guess, in a way, we talk about freedom all the time. Iran, is it on the brink? Can freedom really ring there? I want to play a very short video clip because it's a very fluid situation over there. But this just shows you a little bit about what's happening over the last couple of days in Iran, and we'll come right back and talk about it. Ted, we've over the last 40 some odd years since they've been in power over there, the mullahs and all, we've seen various stages of unrest over there, but this one here seems to be the one that might push them over the top. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I think it is. I think this is a real one. I think it's going to happen. And the less we do, I think the better off Iran and the Iranian people will be. The son of the previous Shah, he has stood up and he's come out of exile and said he was willing to lead this country, Iran, into the future and get away from the theocracy that they have. And I think this is what's needed. You know, the people are rising up and they're fighting for freedom, John. And this is a universal, innate thing that the Lord, God's put into all of us, liberty and freedom. That's something that we're empowered with. It's like a pine tree or pine cone. That pine cone knows it's supposed to grow straight and strong, and it does that. That's an innate property. Innate properties in us are liberties and freedom, self-determining. And you have to have a system that protects us, and that is the U.S. government has been great, or the Constitution's been great on that. These other nations, they want the same thing. They just don't have the system. And it's going to be, we can't give them freedom. They have to want freedom, and they have to be willing to fight for it. They're fighting for it now. And, like I said, the better we stay out of it, I think the stronger the freedom fighters will be. We can assist them, but no boots on the ground. I hope President Trump doesn't do that. I suspect there'll be some bombings. When he says, oh, we're going to discuss what we're going to do, that means they're going to bomb probably, right after he hangs up, is what we've learned.
Well, we'll have to wait. We'll have to kind of wait and see how it all plays out. My only concern about the Shah's former son is if he just, I've watched him over the years. I like what he has to say, but I'm not convinced that all of the Iranian people are going to get naturally behind him. So I don't know if he's the right guy or not. He certainly needs to be in the mix, and it's going to be a little bit more difficult, I think, to sort out than potentially Venezuela is myself.
I think we need to focus on the hornet's nest we opened in Venezuela and not get involved in that. There are other countries in the world, John, that can intervene on the behalf of the Iranian citizens, and the best ones to intervene would be the Iranian citizens. We've got a big enclave here in the United States, or diaspora, that would be willing to help and support. And I know if they were able to topple the theocracies, the mullahs, that a lot of them probably would go back there because they're strong entrepreneurs and they would love to rebuild their country.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the Middle East itself, which obviously includes Israel, but certainly Qatar, who backs them up,
sure.
Talking about Iran and all of that they have to take some ownership. And I don't mean ownership of coming into Iran, but they need to take ownership in solving the problem.
Yeah, they need to be like State Farm, the good neighbor. The State Farm is there. That's not a plug for any State Farm rep agencies out there, but you can be a sponsor.
Yeah. Well, I want to, we're about to come up on Martin Luther King Day, and there's a couple of quotes that he has out there, because everybody thinks that I have a dream speech and all that, and rightfully so. But I want to read a couple of different quotes that I think are pertinent to what is happening in the world. Don't get lost in Martin Luther King and some of the controversy there, because wisdom is wisdom no matter what. And one of them, sure, he said was, our lives, talking about human beings, I think, our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. And to me, that's all about what we're doing here: educate, motivate, activate people. We've got to have people who are willing to speak up about things that actually matter, the way I look at it.
Oh, absolutely. I quoted him many a times. One of my favorite quotes of his is, injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere. And I kind of added to that the tolerance of injustice anywhere is the tolerance of injustice everywhere. And, if you just got to stand up and do what's right for the right reasons. And I think that's the way we all are designed, but there's that faction out there that's going to stand up and do the right things for themselves. And we see it in politics and police, law enforcement. We see it everywhere. People are going to be self-serving and do what's best for themselves. And ultimately, that's you're not going to have a civil society that way. So you've got to look out for each other. And his words, they were radical at the time. It was radical because he was a black man and he had organized millions of people in America and around the world, and it scared the government. And the FBI had files on him. And we still don't know the true story behind how he got assassinated or why. But there's a lot of not seeds, but a lot of things have sprouted up about why he got shot. Was it the FBI and they had a hitman that did this? And so, unfortunately, when you have people like that to stand up, that rocks the boat and threatens power, they're going to have these kind of things happen to them. We saw that with Donald Trump, twice.
Yeah. And, another one of his quotes that, as I say, we're coming up on Martin Luther King Day, that I think applies especially true to what is happening inside our country today, and even how we're dealing with the outside world, whether it be Venezuela or what's unfolding in Iran. And that was when he said, the ultimate tragedy is not the oppression and cruelty by the bad people, but the silence over that by the good people. In other words, if you stand by and do nothing, then you are really a worse problem in some ways than the evil. Because people are going to do evil. They are. Bad people are going to act and all that. And I hear people saying all the time, that people who supported Donald Trump, for instance, they may not or may not agree with every single thing he's doing, but they're so fed up, or they're not even going to vote in the midterms and stuff like that. That would be the absolute opposite of what you want to do. Because if you don't want the world to totally fall into chaos and totally be turned over to evil doers, so to speak, good people are going to have to stand and be recognized.
Well, and how many times in history, just in the last 30, 40 years, have we seen people witness horrific crimes and they didn't step in? There was that young lady that got raped and beat up and killed in New York on the streets, and there was a crowd of people there. They did nothing. The young lady on the bus or on the train that got stabbed in the neck, and all those people were looking, but they did nothing to help her. This is how you get these kind of actions happening more and more, because there's no cause and consequence of that, from what happened. And that's where people need to stand up, like Daniel Perry on that New York subway. Guy comes in there, obviously mentally disturbed, but he says, I'm going to kill somebody today. And, he starts going around harassing people. And Daniel Perry, the Marine, he does the right thing, but then the media and everybody wants to paint him as a racist and all these things. And, he was just trying to prevent somebody from killing somebody. And in the process, the perpetrator got killed. And, I'm not saying that's a bad thing that he got killed, but it's too bad that had to happen. And there's too many times we don't do what Martin Luther King said. It goes back to, if you see something, say something. And I think that's the responsibility of us. It's uncomfortable. You don't feel right. You're going to get chastised for doing it a lot of times, but you may prevent a violent crime, and you may change the onlooker's attitude that, you know what, I should have done something. I could have done something, to where they say, I'm glad I did do something.
Absolutely. Well, now, ladies and gentlemen, in the few minutes we got left, we're going to totally switch gears here. My good friend, the captain of our pirate ship, Mr. Ted Yoho, wrote an editorial titled Florida Property Tax. It is on all of our Facebook sites now. You can check it out. But I'm basically going to interview Ted on this, and he's going to tell us.
Go ahead.
He's going to start by telling us, what was your motivation for writing this, Ted?
My motivation was when they started coming out and talking about, we're going to get rid of property taxes. That probably happened a year ago. I heard DeSantis say it. Then I've heard Byron Donalds say it when he was at the Black Tie and Blue Jeans here in Alachua. And then I've heard the legislators now, I'm seeing reports, it's coming up. There's 4 proposals that are coming up. And I'm thinking, is this a good thing? You know, on the surface, I'm like, yeah, I'd love to get rid of my property taxes. But what happens? So that was my motivation. Is when they came out, I'm hearing this and I'm like, well, it's rhetoric, you know, that we're doing this so they can get elected. And it sounded like just the more I looked into it, it's irresponsible or it's a campaign gimmick. It's like Joe Biden saying, oh, we're going to get rid of student loans. And I think there's some unintended consequences that really need to be looked at before they pass this. And that was the motivation behind it.
Yeah, well, in case people don't really pay attention to what's happening in Florida, Florida doesn't have a state income tax. So the majority of our taxes come from property tax and sales tax in general. But you write in your article here that it sounds kind of good to get rid of property tax, and as somebody who's paying taxes in Alachua County of all places, it definitely sounds good. But you mentioned there unintended consequences. So what are some of those that we need to be concerned about?
Well, think of the unintended consequences. If you get rid of that property tax, and that property tax accounts for 63% of the revenues coming into the Florida legislature, to the Florida government. Homesteaded property taxes is $18.3 billion estimated. So if you get rid of that, the homestead property tax exemption, and just take all that away, the state's got to make up $18.3 million. The unintended consequence, John, is if you get another 9/11, or you get another COVID pandemic, or the housing market turns like it did back in 2008, and the economy just tanked in Florida. I remember going down to Disney World after 9/11, once they reopened it. It was bare. There was nobody there. There were no tourists here. Or you get a national disaster, and the revenue dries up. Where does the tax collector, whom does the tax collector turn to? It's going to be you and I. And so are they going to come back with higher taxes on property taxes, or are they going to raise up taxes on commercial real estate, which is going to drive up the cost of business or drive businesses out? Or are they going to put in a VAT tax, a value-added tax, or a consumption tax? And I wrote in the article, the biggest sin, are they going to have to turn to a state income tax? So these are the unintended consequences. It sounds great on on face value, as I gave that example of our property. Yeah, I would love to get rid of that, but I'm also smart enough to know that people in government are supposed to be wise and steer our country into financial responsibility and fiscal soundness for years to come. And I don't think this is a smart way to do it. I think there's better ways.
Well, not to sidetrack us, but while you were talking too, the biggest storm, everybody thinks about hurricanes, the biggest storm that is potentially going to hit Florida is actually the insurance storm itself, because people don't
That's
realize,
already
hit. that Florida is basically not necessarily intentionally, but it's kind of complicated, but Florida is basically becoming the insurer of the state of Florida. In other words, the state itself is going to be on the hook for insurance. And if we keep moving in that direction, we're going to need more taxes than we probably can even generate.
Well, you are. And then you look at the people are getting priced out of Florida. Carolyn and I have done pretty well, and we're feeling it. We're feeling the insurance. Of course, we own several properties in Florida. So you feel the insurance, you feel the property taxes. I gave the example in that when you look at what property taxes go for, John, it goes to run the government, all functions of government, city, county, state government. And to have a civil society, you have to have a certain amount of money going in there to pay for those things. But the way they do property taxes is very subjective. We built this new house here in Putnam County. And well, I'll just real quickly, we had a double wide mobile home I bought because I knew I was going to tear it down and build a house here. It was 4,200 square feet or 4,500 square feet under roof. and it was valued at $250,000 roughly, and we're paying $4,200 in taxes. I tore that down, built a new house, half the size of the property that was here. The value went up to over $700,000, and it's a nice house. But the taxes went up over 3 times, even though it's half the size. So we're paying $17,000 was my tax bill versus $4,200. All right. In the house is me, my wife, and a dog in the double wide trailer. Now we've lived the American dream. So now we have 2 dogs in this house. So it's still 2 people living in a property, but we're being taxed 3 times more. So does that value of that house justify taxing me 3 times more? Because the taxes go for government services. I am not using any more government services in my new house than I was in my old house. And so I think the way they do it is the way they come up with a value to tax you on. I think it's very arbitrary, very subjective. And a case in point is I went down there and kind of argued my bill. And the lady that did my assessment says, well, I gave you some breaks because I could have charged you 100% of what the formula tells me, but I only charge you 75%. I said, you just proved my point. It's very subjective. And I think you need to take that out of it. Property values go up and they go way down like they did in 2008. And I think the square footage is not going to change. If it changes, it goes into the tax appraiser's office or property appraiser because you put a permit in. And I think that's something that is stable. And if you say, instead of getting rid of my property taxes of $17,000, if you charge me so much per square foot, the state's got a regular income coming in. You're not going to have that sudden loss of $18.3 billion that they've got to make up. But that way it's predictable and it creates certainty.
Well, obviously, people need to educate, motivate, and activate themselves on this. And they could start
read the editorial.
Read the editorial, which is up on all of our Facebook sites. I'll actually pin it to the top later today, but you can see that on there, Ted. So take us out, Ted. We need to close out today.
Already? Man, this went quick. Well, hopefully that editorial will be on the Jacksonville Times Union. And other than that, just stay engaged. I mean, things are happening in front of us, and if we're not engaged, you're going to have to live with what happens. And it's never good on the sidelines getting game, and the game is liberty and freedom, and we're fighting for it, and we need to make sure that we can maintain it for the next generations to come, and that's our goal. So you guys take care. Have a wonderful day, a wonderful week, and we'll see you on Friday. See you, John.
Peace out, everybody.